introduce you. It looks like we finally got the go live working. Yeehaw. Gotta love technology. So just to, yeah, great, it's all working, fantastic. So just as an intro, I have to be really honest and say that ordinarily I like to use this great big whiteboard behind me. I'm a whiteboard girl. I like to sort of draw things and talk through things. But in the interest of this being a webinar, it's much easier for me to actually share some slides with you and actually take you through it. I have got a couple of people, in fact, I've got a few people in the room I'd like to introduce to you before we get started. So first of all, we have Roger Vertannes, who is our international EOS rock star from Sydney. And Roger is joining us to share some of his experiences and help take you through the model and the tools. Welcome, Roger.
Good morning, everyone. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me, Deb.
Oh, my pleasure. Then I've got Vijay, who is a fellow licensee and professional EOS implementer here in New Zealand. Welcome, Vijay.
Debra, morning, everyone.
And just off screen that you can't see, I've got Jen, who is my fabulous assistant, and she's kind of working all the technology and stuff to get things up and happening. And what you also can't see, we've got the two dogs here as well. So Hermes and Apollo are actually sitting over in the dog bed over there. I'm sure they'll be joining in at some point. So my promise to you was that we would deliver in this next 90 minutes some really simple and practical tools that you can use in your business. And you should hopefully have received a workbook. Did everybody get a workbook in their email that they have got, which you can either use electronically or you can, if you've printed it out, you can actually write upon it. Do you want to sit down here, Jen? Yeah, Jen's going to come and sit next to me. So we're going to share the tools of EOS and show you how they can work to simplify your business. And there's three things I'd like to sort of talk about. I'd like to sort of think about, so I'd like us to get really real about our business and ourselves in today's session. I'd like us to keep things really simple. And I want to focus on the stuff that's really going to get you results. And so I'm going to just do a couple of quick questions on some polls, which Jen is going to hopefully help me with. Just one moment. Let's get rid of that. Okay, this is lovely technology. Just so we can get a sense of who's in the room, Jen's going to run a couple of quick polls for me. If you can just quickly on your screen answer these polls for us. So the first one is, how many of you are actually a business owner in the meeting today? Now, I believe that the poll should just be on your bottom of your screen. I haven't, yep, fantastic. So we've got a mixture of both business owners and leaders in the room. That's great. Excellent. I'll just end that one. The next question I've got for you is, what sort of size business do you actually operate? So is it 0 to 20? Is it 20 to 50, 50 to 100, or over 100 people on your team? This is quite fun. Excellent. Okay, so again, we've got quite a mixture there, which is fantastic. So I'm going to try and make sure that everything we talk about is relevant. Can you actually share that result with the people? So this is what we've got in the room with us today, just so you can see. And this will give us an understanding of how we. So we'll try and make sure everything we talk about is relevant. EOS as tools are actually relevant from everybody from one person up to 250 and more. But the sweet spot is between sort of 10 and 250 staff. Okay, and the very last poll is, if we stop sharing and go back to the polls again, what do you know about EOS? Do you know nothing at all? Do you know a little bit about it? Do you consider yourself to be a self-implementer in the process, or are you working with an EOS implementer through the process? Perfect. Let's share that as well. So it's great. We've got a few self-implementers. We've got a couple of people working with EOS implementers. Some who know a little and some know not a lot at all. So the important thing for me is to make sure that with my colleagues here, we actually keep it in a way that it is relevant for everybody. So before we get started, I'm going to take you through the EOS model. This is my agenda up here. Oops, can we actually just, sorry. This is what I'm going to take you through this morning. So we're going to get real. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to get results. The first part we're going to do is start getting real about our business. So as an introduction, what I want you to do, there was a guy called Kurt Gödel, one of Einstein's contemporaries, who said that, if you're actually, it's been proved scientifically, you can't be part of a system and at the same time understand that system. So I want you to actually think about lifting yourself out of being in your business today and lifting yourself much, much higher, taking that panoptic or helicopter view and have a think about what is really going on in your business. You need to be really honest with yourself about where things are really at. And so that is my my plea to you, is to make sure that you actually take yourself out of the normal everyday grassroots and actually think about your business at a much higher level. In the workbook, if you go to page 2, you will see that we have got a little survey, which we'll do in a moment. But before we do that, I just want to give you a brief history of EOS and just show you what EOS is all about. So the brief history of EOS is that, for those of you who don't know, it was started by a guy called Gino Wickman. He is American. We won't hold that against him. But he's a young guy who, at 25 years old, he basically took over his family business, and it was in a real mess, and he had to turn the business around. So he started looking for tools and things he could actually use to help turn this business around. And what he did was he looked at all the greats. So he read all the amazing books like Good to Great by Jim Collins, all the Patrick Lencioni series, the Scaling Up books. He looked at all those different tools. And what he found was that, there was so much information out there, but how do we really simplify it down? And so what he did was he took all of this amazing information and he put it into a very, very simple tool and process and system that can be used by entrepreneurs. Because we know, as entrepreneurs, who here gets distracted by bright lights and other bright, shiny objects? I know I certainly do. And so what he realized was that, as an entrepreneur, we have to simplify this down and make it really easy for everybody to use. And he came up with this thing called the EOS system. He then spent a number of years actually improving that system and putting it into something that any entrepreneurial company could use. And the key thing is, there is nothing new in here. So there's no magic silver bullet. There's nothing new. It's all timeless concepts that have been around for hundreds of years, and will be around for thousands of years more to come as well. So if you're expecting something absolutely brand new, absolutely magic bullet, sorry, this is not the right place. But what we do have is we have a really, really simple model that anybody can take and start using in their business and starting to see the results. And the 3 key things that EOS works on, it works on getting you vision. So 100% of the people absolutely on the same page in terms of your vision for the organization. It works on getting you traction. And traction is about everybody understanding what they need to do, why they need to do it, and having the accountability to actually deliver on that. And finally, we talk about healthy. And this is about creating a team that is actually healthy in terms of having those discussions that need to be had, that are fighting for the greater good, and who are actually having fun working together. So that's the vision, traction, healthy component of EOS. There were 2 discoveries that Gino made when he started putting together this system, that basically there were 2 types of EOS companies. There were those that literally worked their little butts off and kind of got nowhere. And there were those who were able to focus on things and actually get results. And he designed the system to actually help people understand more of what you could do to put yourself into that second type of entrepreneur. And we're all kind of hardwired in the same way. So all entrepreneurs, believe it or not, are hardwired, and we all kind of experience about 136 issues throughout the lifestyle of our business. And those 136 issues are common across the board. And if we can solve them right at the root cause, we can actually move forward and strengthen the business and create things. So EOS as a brand has been around for 20 odd years. We've done 91,000 sessions with companies around the world. We've got about 12,000 companies who are actually using an implementer to implement EOS. And we've got 472 EOS implementers around the world, of which you've got 3 of the best in the room here with you. So that's the brief history. I just wanted to give you that to show you that we're not practicing on you. We've been doing this for a while. We've been at the EOS, been doing it for a long time. And I guess one of the things I wanted to share is, if you're feeling any of these frustrations, lack of control, lack of profit, lack of people, or people not doing the right thing, people issues, hitting the ceiling, or nothing's working, then you're in the right place, because EOS will actually help you to work on those frustrations and actually help you to overcome them. So before we get started, what I would love you to do to get you started thinking about working on the business, I'm going to give you 5 quick minutes to work through the 20 questions that we've got in that page 2 and page 3 of the workbook that you've got. I just want you to think about from your gut. So don't take too long thinking about each question. Just have a read of the question and go, right. So like if I take question 1, we have a clear vision in writing that has been properly communicated and shared by everyone. What does your gut tell you? We've got a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 means it does not exist at all. And 5 means 100%. I could go to your toilet cleaner and they could tell you what that vision is of the organization. So thinking about that as a scale, you've got 1 to 5. You can think of them in terms of percentages. So 1 is 0, 2 is 20, 3 is 40, 4 is going up. And so between 1 and 5. And just to answer each of those 20 questions in the next 5 minutes. And then what you can do for me is you can actually total it up on page 3 and just have a look at the percentage that you actually get from that. So I'm going to give you 5 quick minutes and then I will come back to you. Now, if anybody doesn't have the workbook, Jen is online and she will make sure that you actually get a copy of that. So it looks like Zoltan may not have a copy of it. Just getting that to you now, Zoltan. I'll try. Yes, I've got your message there, Richard. I will try and actually send a copy of that workbook now. Richard, yep. Richard Chu.
Sarah, you answer the questions for the whole business.
Thanks, Roger. Okay, so Jen has just sent that to Richard and to Zoltan if you don't have a copy of it. And when you've finished, if you could just raise your hand on Zoom so I can see when you've finished, please. That would be, oh, not physically because I can't see your hand, but if you can raise the hand using the, what's it called on Zoom? It's called raise hand.
It has a raise hand option on your menu.
Thank you, Vijay. See, I'm so lucky. I've got Vijay, who's kind of an IT guru in the room that's going to help me here, and Roger and Vijay are here to actually kind of help chip in with answers and things. They know a lot about all kinds of stuff, including the answer to the meaning of life. Isn't that right?
Keep learning. Just need to scroll down to the second slide, please, Jen. Jen or Deb.
I actually don't know that we have the second slide on the screen because that was just an example.
Oh, I see.
Yep. Just for your reference as well, if anybody wants to go through this, you can actually head onto the EOS Worldwide site. You can actually do this electronically, and you can also share it with your team, which is really helpful because you can actually then get an overall picture of how people are actually seeing things. It's a great tool for measuring where you're at and where you need to improve. Okay, we're getting a few hands up here, which is great. Gold stars for the star pupils. Even Zoltan's done it. Right, excellent. This is fantastic. Okay, just a couple more minutes there. And again, do use that chat function or the Q&A if you've got any questions or anything that you want to raise. We're going to have a section at the end for questions. So we'll bank up those questions and we'll actually answer them at the end. But please do put them in as you think of them. So what we're going to do next, once we finish this, is we're going to basically talk you through the EOS model. And we're going to start to share with you the tools that we actually use in this model. And in your notebook, you've got plenty of room. It shows you the bits we're talking about. You've also got room to actually take lots of notes on that. So I highly encourage you to take lots of notes. How are we all going? Are we pretty much all finished? You'll hear us talk later on in the in the session around, the difference between different styles, and I know that sort of visionaries have this tendency to go, really quick start, they'll get through this. I can see a lot of the visionaries have already finished their workbook, yay. So I would encourage you, to think about the questions, but really just go with that gut feel. Don't overthink it, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to get a bit of it's a bit of a litmus paper test about where you actually are in your business. It's not absolute. It's interesting because many of you all know I'm actually married to an actuary. So in actuarial world, it's black and white. In entrepreneurial world, a little bit of grey is okay. Go with the gut. Okay, I'm hoping that most of you have got that done by now. If not, you can always finish it off. What you will see at the bottom of that organizational checkup is there's actually a little score thing there. And what it says is it depends on what you score. There's a couple of recommendations around what you can do. But don't worry too much about that because we're going to get into the actual meaty stuff now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you around the EOS model, which I have to say ordinarily I would actually draw on the board. So I'm really rather tempted, but I'm not going to because it's going to be a little bit difficult to see. So I'm going to put it up on the slide instead. And so I'm going to take you very quickly, if my little mouse will work, through the EOS model, which is a very, very simple model. So it works on the premise that everything is around your business. It's at the center of it, right? And what we say is that there are basically 6 components. So if you can work to strengthen them, and if you can get rid of those 136 issues at the root cause, you will have a better business. So I'm going to take you once around the model and those 6 components. Then we're going to come back into it and cover off the 2 tools that we use in each of these areas. And it's not going to be me doing all the talking. So don't worry, I'm going to hand over to my learned colleagues very shortly, but I am going to just take you through the model first of all. So the first thing is vision. And if you think about vision, I'm going to take you to show you what 100% would look like. So 100% strong in the vision component would mean that you have a plan and that everybody in the organization knows what that plan is. And they know how they fit into it and what it means for them. That is what our vision component looks like. It's 100% strong. And when I say everyone, I really mean everyone. I'd love to be able to call up your receptionist and go, tell me what the vision of the organization is, and they should be able to tell you. The next component is around people. And without a doubt, we all know that people make or break a company. But we have all these different tools that can tell us about superstar people, rock stars, top graders. We have a much simpler tool in terms of deciding who are the right people and getting the right people in the right places in the business. The next part of the model is around data. And this is really interesting. This is about measuring things that actually make a difference, but more importantly, actually acting on those things too. Because it's all very well having data, but unless you do something with it, it makes absolutely no sense. And often in entrepreneurial businesses, what we find is that with data, we go for ego-driven type metrics rather than things that really make a difference. So in the data component, we look at what are the key things that we need to be measuring, what are the key things that show us that we're moving forward towards that vision, and how do we keep a track on that on a regular basis. With the 4th component is issues. And issues, as I said, exist in every business, 136 of them if we keep going on about it. But the reality with issues is we often know there are issues, but we keep resolving them over and over again, which means we're not actually solving them. We're actually just, they keep repeating themselves over and over. We also often in business don't have an issues list. So we don't have the facility to actually understand what the issues are. So one of the key components around EOS is actually getting those issues out and then working out a way to solve them at the root cause once and for all. Process component is the 5th component. And this is around knowing that your main process, your core processes are absolutely documented and people understand what they are. So if you're 100% strong in the process component, everything in your business, like the E-Myth Revisited talks about, is a place where you could actually replicate your business without it requiring you to be there. And finally, the 6th component is traction. And Gina always says, vision without traction is hallucination. And so traction is about where the rubber hits the road. How do we take that amazing vision that you have and make sure that it's actually being used by people on a day-to-day basis? They know what they're accountable for, they know why they're doing it, and they're keeping track of it. So if we can get 100% strong in each of those 6 key areas, we basically have a business that is much, much stronger and is producing the results. There's my Gino Wickman quote. Didn't realize that was there. We measure this thing in a sort of scientific way. We use, the organizational checkup, but also sort of the gut feel to go, hey, on a scale of 0 to 100, where do you sit? And the goal is we want to get to 80% in the business, because that's when you have a business that is really strong and is actually delivering on its vision. And in reality, most businesses, this is an American slide, they say most businesses are around 20%. In my experience in New Zealand and Australia, it's probably more like around 40%. But certainly it's pretty low, and so we're aiming for 80%. So that is the overview of the model. That's what we're going to dive more deeply into. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with actually talking about the vision component, and I'm going to hand over to the other guys to continue on. So are we all ready to move on if I talk about vision? So vision is, it's one of the most interesting things in an entrepreneurial company. And having owned several businesses myself as well, we all have a vision. It exists in our head without a doubt. But the reality is it might exist in our head, but do people understand what we really mean? And often as entrepreneurs, we have a very strong idea in our own minds, but nobody else understands it. So we use two tools to actually bring this vision component to life in our business. We use a thing called the 8 questions. And the 8 questions are spelled out in this tool that we call the Vision Traction Organizer. This is on page 4 in your workbook and page 5, and it consists of 2 components. So the first page is very much around the vision of the organization. Who are we? Why do we exist? Where are we headed? What are we doing? And the second page is around the traction part, which is more around bringing that plan down to the ground and actually looking to see what needs to be done and focusing in on the most important things. So I'm going to take you through the 8 questions and just show you how they're actually used. So the first question on the vision part of the Traction Organizer is core values. And I'm sure most of you have core values in your organization. They're the way that we operate, the way that we do business around here. It's the way we actually make decisions. And so core values, you know, they're called, they're spoken about, I should say, in a lot of business books. And they're also used a lot. My experience in corporate is they're used a lot to put them up on the walls and go, look, we've got some core values, tick, we've done that, that's it. But in reality, core values should be around the way that you actually operate in the business. It's about the way that you hire, fire, and reward people in the business as well. And so to get to the true understanding of what our core values are, we have to make sure that they actually are based on the way that our people operate. And so in EOS, we actually work through looking at our top employees and saying, what are the core values that they actually have? Then we define them, and then we make sure, so we discover them through a process of looking at our employees. We define them, and we're very, very clear, usually with a singular word and a description of how they actually work. And then we live and breathe them. And it's really important that everything we do in the organization is around, I say, hiring, firing, rewarding based on those core values. Really interesting little story. I had a client who was down in Christchurch who came to us and said, look, we've got core values. I said, that's fantastic. Tell me what they are. We've got 9 of them. Awesome, 9 core values. Can't wait to hear this. I had 11 shareholders in the room. And I said to them, right, okay, you got 9 core values. Somebody just give me 1 or 2. And literally the room went silent. So we had 11 people with 9 core values and not one person could actually name a core value for me. So I said, okay, that's great, lovely. Let's just see if we can get those a little bit refined, if you like. And we have this saying in EOS that less is more. And it absolutely is. I give the example, if you send your partner off to go and do some shopping for you and they haven't got a shopping list and you give them 1 or 2 or 3 things, you might get those 1 or 2 or 3 things. If you don't give them a list and you give them more than 3 things, they will come back with everything but what's on that list. So less is more. Let's discover those core values. Let's get really, really clear about what they are. That's the first part of the vision component. The next part is about our core focus. And there are 2 parts to this. So this is the why we exist and who we exist for. So the purpose, cause, or passion is the why. Simon Sinek, Golden Circle, there's a great video around this, around what is that actual why. Why do you exist? So for me, it's around helping entrepreneurs live a better life. And then your niche is like, who do you actually do it for? So it's what can be the best in the world at? The next thing is the 10-year target, and this is called many different things as well. Jim Collins refers to it as a big, hairy, audacious goal. But in this, you want to get very, very clear in a very short, succinct sentence. What is that sort of guiding light, that northern star that you are aiming for in a way that is measurable and also motivates people towards that? So what is your 10-year goal that you want to achieve? What do you want from your business? Can be 5 to 30 years out, not always 10 years out. And what is the number 1 goal? So as an example, Volvo was a great one. By 2020, we don't want anybody to be seriously harmed or killed by a Volvo. That gave them an absolute guiding light, a compass point to follow. It was measurable. They knew what they had to do. And it meant everybody in that organization was working towards having a car built that would actually achieve that. The next thing is the marketing strategy. And for those of you who know me will know that I spent a long career history in marketing. So this is not a typical marketing strategy. It's not a plan. This is not your tactical plan. This is about who should we be talking to? Who is the target market or the list we want to talk to? Describe them in ways around psychographics, demographics, geographics. What do they actually look like? So as an example, EOS, our target market is privately owned businesses with 10 to 250 staff who want to grow, who are open to receiving help, who are willing to be open and honest, and looking for that growth. So that's our target market on the list. You'd be very, very clear. Then we look at the 3 uniques, and we basically say that one unique isn't going to work. A USP is difficult. What are the 3 uniques that maybe on their own, some of your competitors may have 1 or 2 of them, but 3 together they just don't have. So vision, traction, healthy is what we talk about in EOS. Many consultants will say they'll help you with vision. Many will say they can help you with an operating system. Very few would say we can help you with a vision, an operating system, and also a way to keep your team healthy. Then we have a thing called the proven process, which is a way that you actually graphically represent how you work with your clients in a proven way. Look, we've been around for a long time. This is how we work together. Here's the graphic representation of how we work. If we work through this process, we know we'll get the results for you. And then finally, there is the guarantee. And the guarantee is something that takes away the fear of working with you. So for example, the EOS guarantee is work with us as a professional EOS implementer. And if you don't see value in the day that we deliver, you don't pay for it. So that takes away all the fear of actually working with an EOS implementer. That's the simplified version of a marketing strategy. There's a lot more that goes in behind that, but that's how you work with it. Then we look at the 3-year picture. And the 3-year picture is not, there's some cold, hard targets in there, but it's actually more emotional than that. It's painting the picture of what does it look like in 3 years' time. If you work for us in 3 years' time, we will have branches around the world. We will have offices that win awards. We will have the best workplace awards. We will be working with X number of clients. It's a real emotional sell. And I did this with a client the other day who's based on in Wellington. They've got about 120 staff. We actually had our all-staff meeting and we got them to close their eyes and we painted this 3-year picture for them. And at the end of it, they all went, hell yeah, I want to be part of that. That sounds fantastic. And if you can get to that point, that is where you know you've got the right people doing the right things. So that is very much about painting the picture, making sure they understand where we're headed to. Then we come down to the grounds, the traction part of the VTO. And this is where the rubber hits the road. Like, what do we now need to do? Laser sharp focus on what needs to be done. So the 1-year plan is very much about looking at the future date 1 year out. What's our revenue? What's our profit? What's our key measurables? And then what are our 1 to 7 goals for the year? So again, the less is more. It's really challenging, especially in a slightly larger organization, to go, but we've got all these goals. We've got 27 goals for the year. I hate to tell you this, but you're probably not going to achieve them. So if we can be laser sharp focused and have between 3 and 7 goals for the year, that's when we'll actually get the results. So working through and going, what are those key things we absolutely need to focus on? Then it breaks down further into rocks. And rocks, if you've ever seen the video about the guy who's got the glass and the rocks and the pebbles and the sand and the water, the rocks are the most important parts. They have to go in first so that everything else can then fit around them. So the rocks go in first, then the pebbles, then the sand, then the water. That's how it all fits together. And the rocks are those 90-day things that you have to do to achieve your 1 year, 3 year, 10-year plans. So for the next 90 days, what are the 1 to 7 most important rocks that we have to focus on? And they have to be measurable and they have to be allocated to somebody. So there's no point in saying we want to be blah or have blah or achieve this without actually saying who is accountable. So the great thing about setting rocks is we do it at an organizational level, we do it at a departmental level, and we do it at an individual level. And everybody understands what those rocks are and what they have to achieve. And then finally on the VTO, we have the issues list, one of my favorite tools. This is where we get to write down everything that is actually an issue in the long term that is stopping us from getting to where we want to get to. So what is holding you back? What's stopping you from getting to where you want to get to? We keep a track of this on an ongoing basis, both in our day-to-day work, but this is more the long-term thing. So that 2-page plan is the 8 questions. If you do nothing else, I would beg of you to actually use that 1-page plan, because that is a thing you can share with everybody in the organization. It is really, really succinct. It's really simple, and it helps people understand what is going on. But more importantly, we have to know that this is actually shared by all. So having 8 questions answered is great, but we have to make sure it's shared by all. And this means regularly communicating this, having quarterly State of the Nation updates with your staff, making sure you're talking to it in each of your meetings that you have. So 8 questions shared by all, that's the vision component. That's what it looks like in the EOS model. I'm now going to take a break and I'm going to hand you over to Roger, who's over in Sydney, and he's going to take us through the next parts of the model. If you've got any questions, put them into the chats or Q&A, and we'll make sure we get to them at the end, okay? Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Deb.
Pleasure.
Okay, well, if you're anything like me and you come to these talks, you'll be writing some things down quite quickly there, in the sense of trying to get your vision out of your head and onto that workbook or onto your iPad, whatever you're using today. But, you know, as Deb said, when we talk about vision, we really mean about crystallizing it and simplifying it. So that VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, it's all about making sure that we can get it out of our heads, make it real simple, and you can start to share it with your company. So I'm going to take you through what happens when you have crystallized that vision. Your leadership team feel very much on the same page. What we want to do here is we want to take our people now to the next level and get them rowing in the same direction to our vision. So as we go through the, we call the second part of our tool of vision of shared by all. It's when we work with companies, we ask them to do a state of the company address. So when you have your vision crystallized, every quarter we get you to update the business. Everyone, it's an all employee meeting. It's compulsory. I still hear companies telling me that some of their staff don't turn up to these meetings. Be assured that when you want to announce something, everyone should be there, contractors as well, and get everybody understanding where we're going and how we're going to get there. Once you do that, we go to the next component, which is the people component. And we use a couple of tools here. So Deb spoke about this DNA of your culture, the principles, the guiding principles of your organization called your core values. And we simply use a really cool tool. It's probably the best HR tool I've come across, and it's called the People Analyzer. So I'm just going to bring up an example of how to use this. You're on page 6 now of the workbook. And what you do with your core values is you put them on the top of the diagonal columns. These are our 5 core values at EOS. So humbly confident, grow or die, help first, do the right thing, and do what you say. And we have behaviors that drive those values as well, articulated, so we know that we can align our behaviors to them. So I've got some fictitious people in my team here, Maria, Jalen, and Amina. And as we go through the People Analyzer tool and you analyze these people across your values, you would give one of your people a plus assessment if most of the time they exhibit that core value. No one's perfect, of course, so hence the word most of the time.
Sorry, Raj, may I interrupt you for a sec? You're sharing the wrong screen. We can't see your presentation. I don't think your presentation is running at the moment.
Okay, I'll stop it and start again. Thanks for the heads up. Was it always like that, Vijay?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not shared. Once you share it, we're not seeing it, sadly.
Sorry, guys.
That's all right.
It's not showing the slideshow mode. It's showing your presentations, the editable version.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Okay, so if you do have core values in your organization, please put those on the top of those diagonal columns. You may have 3 to 5 is typically what we find in most of the companies we work with. We encourage our clients to choose up to that sort of 3 to 5 number, only because it's very difficult, like that example Deb gave us earlier around the 9 values. Very hard to find great people when you have that many values, let alone remembering them. So thanks for your patience on that. So we've got our 5 values here. We've got 3 people. We're going to give Maria a plus because in Humbly Confident, she exhibits that core value most of the time. With Jalen, not so much. It's a minus, which means most of the time they do not exhibit the core value. So you really have major concerns about people who behave that way. Amina, on the other hand, is a plus minus, which means you may get people in your organization and you may have them today. I mean, 82% of companies who come for our help, they have people issues and they say, hey, Raj, Deb, Vijay, we don't have all the right people in the right seats and we need to fix that. So Amina has a plus minus because it means sometimes they do and sometimes they don't exhibit the value. And these type of people can be quite emotionally unstable, or they might be something going on behind the scenes. The great thing about the People Analyzer tool, it's a coaching tool. All right, most visionaries find it very difficult to have tough people conversations, which we'll talk in the next tool as well. And when you have a tool like this, you can really be open and honest. You know, the truth does set you free, and you need to tell people where they sit. So as we actually assess each of these 3 people, you'll see that your top employee, Maria, stellar culture fit, right? Absolutely fits our culture like a glove. Jalen is an exit, and we have to make swift people decisions. If we want to have that great vision achieved, you just can't achieve that vision with people like Jalen in your organization, and we need to do something about it. But by just raising what I've found, continue to get text messages and emails every month. I get them from clients saying, hey, Raj, following the quarterly meeting, we had a chat with Jalen and, you know, they've owned the way they've been behaving. And if you're really honest with them, they typically own the issue and they transfer it from your responsibility to their own. I'll give you a little bit of a tip on that in a moment. Amina has something going on behind the scenes, or there is some instability there. And with some coaching and empathy, we wrap some coaching and empathy around someone like Amina. Some of the time, they can come back up to the bar. The bar being that you must set a bar for your core values. And we have, sorry, moved on there. We have a bar for our core values. I would say do the right thing is not a plus minus in my terms. This is probably for the presentation. Do the right thing would be a plus for sure. But grow or die simply means taking ourselves to the next level so we can take our clients to the next level, right? Making sure that we're well practiced, well rehearsed. And sometimes people are that, but we've decided that that's a plus minus in the core values here at EOS. So when you actually measure people against your bar and you have results like this, just be aware you've got to do a couple of things. The first thing is you must provide them specific examples of where they're not meeting the bar. So in example of Jalen, it's a tough conversation. It's emotional. All right, so what an integrator would typically do, or their manager or leader, is they'd go to Jalen and say, hey, you know what? You know we've got these core values. You know how important they are to us. And right now you're way below the bar in these 3 core values of humbly confident, help first, and do the right thing. And you need to give them 3 data points. So please note this down. The 3 data points are the specific examples of when they don't exhibit the value. It could be a customer interaction. It could have been an internal interaction with the team, which it typically happens. Okay, it could be, you know, taking a lot of Friday and Mondays off, depending on who they are. But ultimately, you need to actually transfer that ownership. And what typically happens in EOS, we say we don't fire people when companies are running on EOS. All right, individuals who know they don't fit the culture, they already know it. So they take ownership, and typically within 30 to 45 days, in my experience over the 6 years of running EOS through companies here in Australia, they typically resign. They don't want to suffer in silence and be in an organization in which they don't fit. Amina needs some coaching, and when that happens, we'd like to think that they are, you know, their awareness is raised and they come back up to the bar. So that's the People Analyzer tool, a great HR tool. You can use it also in your hiring, okay? So that when you actually ask your interview questions and your hiring questions, you'd like to think that you'd actually give a core values speech a part of your recruitment process, which basically means this is who we are. And if this is not you, you're probably not going to succeed here. It's best to give people that filter of almost repelling them rather than taking on people quickly, as most entrepreneurial companies do, and then finding that they're not a culture fit. So I was always taught back in the day, hire slow and fire fast, and you will get to where you want to get to. So what do we do when we actually do have great people in our organization? We want to make sure they're in the right seat. And Jim Collins popularized the phrase of right people, right seats. And Gino simply, when he set up EOS as a tool and system, he came up with this brilliant tool from other principles called the accountability chart. And we take a very fresh approach to this tool. We call it structure first and people second. So when we work with clients on the very first morning, you can imagine, first morning, the leadership team or the proposed leadership team come in here, and when we actually get to draft this tool up for the first time, we pretty much theoretically fire everyone and say, you don't have a role. And what we do is we structure the business first. It's called the accountability chart. And we start with the assumption that every company has a marketing and sales function, an operations function to deliver the product or service, of course, and to obviously have a finance function. And what we do is we customize this accountability chart structurally for your business for 6 to 12 months with a viewpoint in the future. 6 to 12 months, you can't go further than that because we need to align it to the 3-year picture and then the 1-year plan specifically. So what we do is marketing and sales, we sometimes see split. You normally have the socials and branding in there. Operations often splits into a couple of areas as well. Sometimes I have clients who have CTOs, technical officers, in the sense of IT companies, and construction operations can sometimes split into the actual delivery and into compliance or ISO, and etc. Finance can sometimes also split into HR and IT, although I always find it interesting how a finance person has to do the people component and also be an IT expert. But I always would encourage you to really have a look at the structure and make sure that if we're structured correctly, we're going to go to the next part of defining the roles and accountabilities for each person. Now, in our way of structuring the accountability chart, there's a couple of other seats we need to consider. The first seat is called the integrator. It's the person in the organization that harmoniously integrates the rest of the team. Certainly, they're direct reports of the main senior management team or leadership team, whichever you call this yourselves. And the integrator is the person who runs the business. They're actually the glue. They beat the drum, they get the business into a rhythm, and they're generally logic-based people, great communicators. They have high levels of empathy. They know how to have tough conversations, so they have the empathetic viewpoint and great communication, but they know how to give someone a kick up the butt with the accountability when needed. They typically take on the special projects of the organization. So just make sure you're making reference here now to page 7 as I go through this, and you'll see the bullet points in the accountability chart illustration on page 7 of your workbook. And the integrator really is that person who is very data driven, right? If you take on special projects, they might be implementing a enterprise resource planning system or maybe a new IT system or anything like that, and they'll go and do the business case analysis, present it back to the team, give a few cost options, and everyone can have a look and see what the best informed decision is. So the integrator typically is responsible for the business performance. Now, the fifth function of the accountability chart is in about 80 or 90% of the businesses I work with, and I'm sure it's the same with Deb and Vijay, is we have this visionary founder of the company. And the visionary founder, they're very emotional people, right? They fly at 30,000 feet and they're brilliant people because they see things that we don't see. They're really in touch with their industry or sector. All right, they hate tough conversations. They get bored easily. They don't like lots of detail or data. So you've got these very, very different individuals here in the integrator and visionary. And the first thing we make sure you get right is to ensure that these two roles are very well defined for your unique business. So the integrator is going to actually run the team. I know that once I went out to Detroit with the team to go to the QCE, the quarterly exchange in Detroit. And one of the guys I was talking to at dinner there was saying that his one of his clients always say he's a visionary founder, and he says, I don't mind managing people as long as they don't need managing. So I'm not sure really what that means, but certainly visionaries don't like to take care of the people, although they do absolutely have a defined love and breeding of their brand and culture. All right, they still want to go and connect with their people. They are people's people at the end of the day, but we need to make sure they are completely separate on the accountability chart. What happens once we get these structure right? We start to define each of the 5 major functions of the roles of the function. So these are defined accountabilities. They're very high level. And then we put the name in. We don't put the name in and then define the role. So just an example for you for marketing and sales. If a marketing and sales manager has a team or any one direct report, we always use the first bullet point of LNA. It stands for lead, manage, accountability. We're going to make sure they lead and manage their team, and accountability is a byproduct of being a great leader and a manager. Obviously, they will do the marketing, they'll hit sales numbers, they're there to sell, whether it's to existing, well, that's sell, it means the business growth. Account management would be to upsell or make sure we have maintaining client relationships. When we actually look at someone in the right seat, we have a tool called GWC. I'm not going to talk to the hockey US example here on this screen. I'd rather talk rugby or soccer, to be honest. But what I would love to say is this GWC really works. When you basically assign a structured seat, 5 roles in that seat, we're asking, once we put the person's name in that seat, we assess them on these 3 yes or no's. Do they actually get the role? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do it? So to break this down, get it simply means the neurons of their brain, they get out of bed every morning and they are connected to the role. All right, Dr. Ken Robinson calls it aptitude. He also wrote a great book called The Element. I'd encourage you to read that. And what it means is people are in their element when they are in the right seat of your business, which is why I always say I don't understand why finance people do in HR and IT. It's not their role. They might need to do it in a small business now. I noticed in the results that most of the companies we're talking to you guys today are like between 0 or 1 and 50. So we're small business, and we do need to wear different hats, but we need to make sure we're going to succeed in that role as well. So get it means aptitude and really get in the role. You can't force someone to want it nor pay them enough money. So they need to actually want the role as well. And the capacity is time and knowledge, but it also means spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional capacities to succeed in their seat. And once you actually have this, you put this on the people analyzer tool to define right people, right seats. So with Maria, she is a right person, stellar culture fit. She also happens to be yes, yes, yes. She does get it. She wants it. She has the capacity. She's a right person, right seat. Jalen is a wrong person in the wrong seat. And Amina is hopefully a right person, but she's in the wrong seat. And with Amina, you'd actually try to find them a different seat in the organization if there is one to offer them. But we don't create seats on the accountability chart because we are commercial for profit organizations and we just can't afford to do that. So unfortunately, that would be a tougher exit as well if we didn't have a new seat for Amina to be offered. The bar is slightly different to GWC. It is not plus, plus, minus, or minus. Some of my clients implementing EOS after 6 or 9 months still get this one wrong. So just make sure GWC is based on yes, 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 and you need 3 yeses in order to match the person. So you basically will remember, just as a wrap up of the accountability chart, 5 roles, less is more. You can get up to 7 sometimes in larger organizations. I don't have an issue with that, but I think if it gets over the 5 to 7, that you're probably getting into a more job description, position description definition. So just try to come out of those weeds and define them from a high viewpoint. Now, when the accountability starts to branch out, this is what it will typically look like. It will be completely customized to your unique business, as I said. And what happens here, you're going to have 2 kinds of people issues in your business. You're going to have a right person, beautiful person, you love to work with them. However, they're in the wrong seat like Amina. Let's offer them another seat and see whether they GWC it. Or you may have a wrong person in the right seat. These people can be typically in sales and they are the wrong culture fit. They're actually bringing in good revenue and you don't know what to do with them. But unfortunately, if you work with an EOS implementer like Deb or Vijay, you're going to be urged, in fact, passionately pled with to actually make swift people decisions. So getting 100% strong there is the people analyzer tool and the right people, right seats with the accountability chart. The data component is very simple. We simply ask you to think about what Jim says here. Do you have the right data, or do you just have opinions, excuses, or ego at play when you talk about what are we achieving on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis? So with data, we just ask you to create a scorecard. We ask you to imagine yourself on a distant island. Yeah, borders open as well, but a distant island, you're disconnected from your business. And the mindful work here is that we just ask you to understand that you're not connected to your business at all. But when you look back into the business, probably using your accountability chart structure, and you ask yourself, what are the 5 to 15 numbers that I would need to know about as the business owner, that I would have an extreme and visible pulse on the business as to whether it is on track or off track for the quarter or the 1 year plan. And once you get those 5 to 15 numbers, again, like Deb said earlier, less is more. We typically run this with every client on the very first day we work with them. And I've pretty much had 60, 70 companies get to somewhere between 12 and 15 each time. So it's the 5 to 15 numbers. Once the scorecard is done, it looks like this. These are some key measurables of examples. You set a weekly goal that is engineered towards your 1 year plan or your quarterly plan, and you put the weekly goals engineered in there. You must assign accountability as to who owns the measurable. Otherwise, no one's accountable. So one person must own it. And once you then start to see a pattern and trend emerge on your scorecard, you'll see these patterns and trends actually tell us what should we actually do about it now, rather than get to the end of the quarter and historically look back in the rearview mirror. The windscreen on our cars is bigger for a good reason. We must look forward. So we have a mix of leading and lagging indicators on the scorecard. So please have a look at what that exercise is for you, and get these 5 to 15 numbers down pat, really simplify them and get this scorecard working for you. It's a beautiful tool to direct the business and your leadership team to getting more of the right stuff done. What happens there is that scorecard in the first bullet point of our model is the leadership team. So the leadership team have a scorecard. When EOS is implemented and cascades through your organization, the marketing department would have their own scorecard, as would sales, operations, and finance. And potentially this function here, these two people here, the person at the top of this illustration has one direct report. They would have their own scorecard to make sure that the person underneath them reporting to them have their own 1 to 3 numbers. When the scorecard cascades, just bear this in mind, it's not 5 to 15 numbers. Each person in your organization will end up with the 1 to 3 numbers that they connect their dots with, to the vision of the company, to the plan of the company, and they understand exactly why they get out of bed every morning and come and row hard in your business as well. It's incredible that 2/3 of the workforce, they say, are still disengaged. I really don't understand how a cup of coffee is the most important thing that people have come 5 to 9 in the morning. There is too many people, and one of the passions I personally have is making sure that people are given this data. Bear this in mind. Quick tip. The right people in the right seats will love data. So when you implement a system like EOS, the right people, right seats look at data and go, thank you. They almost come and give you a hug. I actually know how I contribute to the business right now. If you have wrong people in your organization, believe me, they will hate data. They will say things like, why do we need to do this? We haven't done this before. This scorecard's rubbish. So again, just bear in mind, this is what we're needing to look at when we implement these tools. So they are called measurables when we cascade them into the business. So being strong in these 3 areas of the business, you're providing a very open, honest cadence to the business. Everyone knows what's happening. It's very transparent. What that does is it flushes out the 4th component, which Deb loves. It's called the issues component. And the one thing about having an issues list, it's a very cathartic and very therapeutic way to get stuff out of your heads. So get the issues list going. They're obstacles, barriers, frustrations. They're also opportunities and ideas. Okay, so whilst the issues list, we're sometimes told by clients, oh, it has a very negative connotation. Bottom line is it needs to be called an issues list. Don't change it. It is our issues. You're normal. Every business on the planet has issues. But please bear in mind, it does allow you to also flush out opportunities and ideas for the business as well. Once you have an issues list, we're going to teach you a solving track to solve these issues for good, okay, using a very simple solving track called IDS. It stands for identify the core issue, discuss it, and then solve it. And it becomes an action item called a to-do. Most leadership teams, and maybe you in the past, we don't know, but they typically identify some issues. They start discussing it, and about 40 minutes later, the team go, that was a good chat. Let's get out of here, come back next week. And they walk out of the room and everyone feels really pumped. About 2 weeks later, one of the owners or one of the managers say, how come that issue's back on the issues list? I thought we solved it. Someone points at Roger and says, hey, Roger, you were going to do something about that. I said, hey, man, it's not me, it's Vijay. He never gets his to-dos done. And everyone starts blaming each other a little bit about what's going on. So what we need to do, first of all, is we need to prioritize our issues list. We teach you how to actually prioritize them with good prediction of what are the 3 issues for this week's meeting that we must gain the greatest traction of. What should we attack first? We always attack them in 3s. We choose the top 3 issues. We circle number 1, and we need to speak to about Andy S. Is he in the right seat or not, or she? I'm not sure of the gender. So we get into identify, we discuss, we have a robust discussion. Everyone puts their perspective and input in. We would use People Analyzer tool for any people issues on the issues list. Go straight to the People Analyzer. It's going to cut out hours of your time of subjective discussion. And once you discuss it and it's solved, an action item goes on the to-do and is sent for an accountable person to action that to-do in the next 7 days and bring it back as a to-done next week. We'll then go to the second issue, resolve that, and then go to the third issue, etc. And it's called IDS. It's one of the best tools I've ever learned. And as a more visionary person, it just gets me to calm down so much better. Okay, 5th component, the process component, another one I love. Most organizations have 6 to 8 core processes, a handful. You're not going to have more than that, not when you're thinking high level. Look at your accountability chart structure here. Do an exercise and think with yourself. What are our core processes? They're typically in people. Sometimes sales and marketing split. Sometimes they're together. Operations can split, customer service, and of course, finance or accounting. We need to get to work. We take a very entrepreneurial approach here. We know that a lot of entrepreneurial companies find this very hard to follow through and get this work done. So we offer them a really great tool called the 3-step process documenter. And what we do is we identify, first of all, the table of contents of the core processes, and then we start to simplify them and document them. So for example, there's an HR process example on the screen. We need to identify talent. We want to define the seat on the accountability chart. So we create an opening for someone. We then look for how we hire. How do we onboard and train people? LMA, remember, stands for Leadership, Management and Accountability. At EOS Run companies, we do this through quarterly conversations with the people, and a manager or leader does that with them. And we also want to know how we terminate people or exit them. Now, we take a very linear approach. Just think about it like this. If you were to actually just 5 steps of each of those processes, you just want to get 5 bullet points down on that 1-page document to say, how do we identify talent? Which channels do we recruit with? When we get the candidates list in, how do we filter them? Who do we invite for interviews? Very less is more, very high level, and we call it documenting the 20% to ensure we get 80% conformance of having a repeatable way of doing things. The great thing about having processes, this is a sales process, get a new lead, qualify them through an initial call, make sure that in the first meeting we're fit to work together, send out a proposal or quote. If you do send out proposals, make sure you go back to meet your client or your customer in person or with an interaction. So many people lose sales because they're sending proposals out and it ends up in a black hole. That's my little sales tip. And then win or lose, you have a win-loss ratio. The great thing about having your processes are 3 outcomes. You become superbly consistent, you become more profitable, and the business becomes more fun. Just think about this. When you're going away, most people are still connected to their laptops. When you have a systemized business, your company way of doing things, people can go away on holiday and understand that the process is there for someone else to follow and fill the gap whilst they're away. I think as entrepreneurs, we should always think about that when people have a break, they should be disconnected from the business, recharge, reset, and have time with loved ones. And this also, obviously a massive benefit of having your processes all defined, documented, and simplified, is that it is one of the value attractors in selling a business. Okay, it's one of the 12 levers of enterprise value. So Isidore says, systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exceptional. Great saying. Okay, so that's me. I'm just going to follow up with the documented processes so I can hand over to Deb. One of the Australian, I guess, Achilles heel here is people get this stuff done and then they don't train their people. So make sure that we do train them. Take time out in your rocks and your 1-year plan to have training days and continual mentoring and coaching. You can't expect people to be the right people in the right seat if we haven't set them up for success with good processes. So make sure they're also measured. You can do that on scorecards. Make sure they have conformance accountability. That is, if they don't follow the processes, okay, there should be a consequence. Otherwise, we've done all that work and we don't have all 37 people, for example, following, and that includes the leadership team. So make sure everybody is held accountable to following the processes. And when that happens, the individuals and the teams can start to update, review them at the period of time that you see fit, which is normally biannual or annual. So that is the process component being strong. I'm going to hand you back to Deb now to wrap up the traction component.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Can somebody nod? One of my fellow panelists nod. Thank you. Also just going to change over to my standing camera. Right, great. Thank you, Roger. That's awesome. Now, Roger and Vijay are here to kind of give us examples with the various companies things we've worked with. We're going to open up a Q&A after we finish, but I'll just finish off with the last component. So the last component, which I have already talked about in my overview, is the traction component. And this is the really important part that brings all of that stuff together and brings it down to the ground. So how do you make sure that you're actually getting traction in the business? And there's 2 key tools here. The first one is ROCs in a 90-day world. And so with ROCs, what we're looking at, as I said before, is very much around making sure everybody has ROCs at an organizational level, a departmental level, an individual level, and they know what they're focused on in this 90-day world. And I can't remember where it came from. I remember reading it somewhere, but basically the human brain cannot function beyond three months or 90 days. And so whilst you've got a wonderful 1-year plan and a 3-year plan and a 10-year goal, the reality is people need things broken down to bite-sized chunks, and that's where ROCs come into it. The second component is around the meeting pulse. And I've actually got a video of this on my YouTube. I love this particular thing. So the meeting pulse is around creating this 90-day world. So that every 90 days, we're kind of revisiting, what we are doing, what we're focused on, how we've gone last quarter, where we're headed to next quarter, and making sure that we're actually dealing with the issues as they arise. And then we have this meeting pulse, which is called our level 10 meetings. So level 10 meetings are our weekly meetings that we hold at the different levels in the organization. So first and foremost, leadership team meeting. And the idea behind the meeting pulse is it is always on the same day, at the same time. It starts on time, it ends on time, and it has the same agenda. So we start with this at the leadership team level. Just for your reference, we're going to look at page 13 to actually go through the structure of that meeting. So it's page 13 in your workbook. But the idea is, the reason we do it on the same day and the same time is there's no excuses. It's every Tuesday, 9 a.m. People know that it's there. It's in their calendar. They have to then, schedule things around it. Start on time is really important. And what we teach people is start on time means if your meeting starts at 9 a.m., I want everybody in the meeting room at 10 to 9, grabbing their coffees, having a chat, catching up. So when it comes to 9 o'clock on the dot, we can go, right, guys, time to start the meeting. And that means we start on time. We also make sure we end on time. Just as we promised with this webinar, we will finish on 90 minutes without a doubt. You can stay behind afterwards if you want to, but the reality is the meeting will actually finish after 90 minutes. And it has the same agenda because it's a very simplified agenda that actually helps people focus on the things that are most important. So if you turn to your page 13 in your workbook, I'll take you through the structure of this level 10 meeting and the psychology behind it as well. So we're going to say our meeting's 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The whole team turns up and at 9 a.m. or 10 to 9, they're chatting. How was your week? What's been going on? Come 9 o'clock, the person who runs the meeting goes, right, guys, time to start. We're going to start with our segue, which is our good news. And the first thing we do is we share a professional and a personal best in the last week since we caught up. And the psychology behind this, it gets people out of thinking about working in the business and up to working on the business. And I run these meetings with my team, even though it's very small. And it's really interesting. By sharing that professional and personal best, you get to learn a lot about your team. One of my previous interns was actually a hip hop dancer. And I didn't know until we got to this personal best and she shared it with me. So really interesting things you can learn. But this gets you out of that day-to-day stuff. It's 5 minutes round the table. First person starts, go around, professional, personal best. The next 5 minutes, we look at our scorecard. So Roger shared with us our scorecard. It's sort of, up to 21 measurables that we're looking at, preferably less is more. And the idea behind that is we're looking only for if we are on track or off track or if there are issues. So if we're on track and we've achieved that scorecard, great. It's just a tick and we move on. If it's off track, we don't discuss it. We just raise it down to the issues list, which is part of the agenda. So the important thing here is if we start jumping into actually discussing things and trying to solve it, we're not dealing with the most important things first. So anything that's off track gets dropped down. The next thing is a ROC review. So we've got our company ROCs, we've got our organizational departmental ROCs, and we literally go through these one at a time. Okay, Roger, your ROC was this. Are you on track or off track? On track, fabulous, moving on. Vijay, your ROC was this. On track, off track, bit off track, great, drop it down to the issues list. And we go through every single one, bearing in mind that even company ROCs have a person who's accountable for it. Then we move on to the customer and employee headlines. This is a one-line headline. Is there something going on? So for example, we had a complaint from one of our big customers. We've got an unhappy, it could be a good news. We've had a great review or a great testimony from one of our customers. What about employee headlines? Did you know that Jen's going off to have a baby, so she won't be here in 9 months' time? I hope that's not the case, but I just made that one up. So 5 minutes, things that we need to actually kind of share with the people in the organization that may cascade down throughout the organization. And this is all about reporting only. So we've got to stick to just literally, are we on track? Are we off track? Anything that comes out of this that is off track needs to drop down to the issues list. We then go through the to-do list. And the to-do list, just so you know, is a 7-day to-dos. So in our last meeting, Jen agreed to do X, Y, Z. Deb agreed to do X, Y, Z. How are we going with those things? And we go through them one by one. Did we get to 90% done? If we have, fantastic, that's what we're aiming for, 90% done each week. If not, it has to drop down to the issues list. Okay, Deb, you haven't done what you said you're going to do for the webinar this week, drop it down to the issues list. And then the most important part of the meeting is this 60 minutes of IDS. And as Roger just taught us, we have our issues list now, which has come from all of those reporting things, our to-do list and any other things that have been raised. And we basically work through IDS. We pick the top 3 issues. And this is where I see most organizations kind of fall down. They start at the top and go, right, we'll deal with number 1. And of course, you can spend 20, 30 minutes discussing something that really wasn't important. So always the 1, 2, 3 most important things. Once we've got that, we work through the IDS, identify, discuss, and solve. And we keep doing 3 at a time, until we get right at the end of the 60 minutes, and then we call it, that's it, no more time. We have to call it the end, and we move on to our conclude. And our conclude, which doesn't show on this slide, but does in your workbook, is where we actually recap our to-do list. So every issue that was solved has a to-do that comes out of it that needs to be done. So we have a look, what is our new to-do list for the week? Are we all clear? Jen, you're clear with what you're doing? Vijay, you know what you're doing? Roger, you know what you're doing? Brilliant, we can now move on. Then we have our cascading messages. What do we need to let other people know in the organization? This could be our departmental level 10 minutes, it could be a company-wide thing. What are the things we cascade down to make sure everybody's across the board? And finally, we rate our meeting every single time. We ask the team to rate the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is shit, technical term, and 10 is awesome. And we have to look at it and go, how are we doing? And the reality is if we're not getting 8 or more, something is wrong. And if somebody scores less than an 8, you have to ask them why, because we're not scoring the person who ran the meeting. We're scoring the team and how the team are working together. So if you're scoring less than an 8, what are you doing personally to make sure that we actually score greater than it and self-correct next time round? So that is the level 10 meeting. It's a really, really simple tool. It's used initially at the leadership team level. Then we use it in the departments. So for example, the sales and marketing department will have a different scorecard, but they will work through that in the same manner. And they may raise things up to the leadership team meeting, or the leadership team meeting may push things down to other levels as well. And everybody follows the same agenda. And if you can put those two things in place, along with our other meetings like our annual planning, what you will find is you suddenly start to get to taking that plan, putting it into actions, resolving the issues and moving forward to things. So that is the EOS model. It is 6 components. The idea is that we're aiming to get results, get 80% strong in each of those areas. And if we can do that, we know from the people that we work with, you can add 30 to 40% to your bottom line in your business. But more importantly, you also get back to doing what you absolutely love. And that's my passion, is helping entrepreneurs to lead a better life through creating a better business. So that's what EOS is all about. The foundational tools that we have covered off so far, so we've got the VTO, which is your 1-page plan or 2-page plan, really, really important for getting that clarity across the organization. The accountability chart, structure first, people second. Do we have the right structure to execute on our plan? Our rocks is breaking it down into nice bite-sized chunks that people can actually focus on and make sure that they're doing. We've got our meeting pulse, which is our regular weekly level 10 meetings to make sure we're all on the same page. And we've got that scorecard, which measures the right things. Okay, I'm just going to these slides just in terms of resources. The thing I actually really love about EOS Worldwide, like I said at the beginning, there's 473 of us EOS implementers around the world. We're supported by a global organization based in the US. They have unlimited resources to help you. Seriously, as an implementer, we get huge support. We have lots of things, but also anybody who's interested, EOS has this value of help first, and they literally help you with all kinds of things. You've got the Traction Library, some amazing books. We've got the Traction book, which is the how-to, taking all of these foundational tools and showing you how to use them. And anybody who's here attending today, if you send me a PM or an email, I'll make sure you get a copy of that Traction book sent out to you. There are other books in the library. I'm looking at my bookcase over here. We've got Get a Grip. We've got Rocket Fuel. So Get a Grip is a fable, business fable. Rocket Fuel is about the relationship between the visionary and the integrator and how that works. You've got the What the Heck is EOS, a great book for sharing with your team around what they need to do. You've got How to Be a Great Boss. How do you take these EOS tools and make sure you actually become a great leader in your organization? There's a whole bunch of downloadable tools and videos at the EOS Worldwide site. There's Basecamp, which is where you can get information, and there's EOS implementers such as Vijay, Roger, and myself, and we can tap into each other. So we meet every week for a weekly meeting on a Monday, and we actually use that time to tap into the collective knowledge of the EOS implementers across the world. So that's kind of the end of the formal presentation. We've deliberately left 12 minutes for us to answer any questions and things. I saw that Richard has already asked one in the chat already. So I'm now going to open up the floor and just ask if there are any questions people would like to ask of us. So the first question, while I've just got this open. Where is it? Oh, I've lost the questions and answers already. So I think Richard was asking about, there you go, Q&A. Oh, it's gone. He was asking about the titles in terms of, you said, is the visionary CEO and integrator, chief of staff, or another suitable title? One of the things that I would say in my experience, the accountability chart is designed to actually remove titles, because titles can actually be very confusing for people. I mean, I think, you know, it's wonderful. If you're a one-man band, you can call yourself any title that you like. But the reality is you may still have to clean the toilet and do all the other things that come with it. So what we like to look at in EOS is more around, you know, what are you actually accountable for? What are the roles that you are accountable for? And it's designed so that anybody in the organization can actually look at that accountability chart and go, if I've got an issue with this, or I want to talk to somebody about this, I can actually see on that accountability chart who is actually responsible for it. And it's designed to give that clarity throughout the organization about who is responsible. So at the end of the day, sometimes we have to have titles in the real world. We need them on our business cards. We want to speak to the CEO or the COO. But in reality, in EOS, we try and stick to that whole accountability chart. Who is accountable for those roles or functions? Roger.
Yeah, one of the things Richard was trying to get clarity on, just for everybody's sake, is he was asking also, is the visionary the CEO and the integrator? So almost defined as such. So I just tap back to him just to share with everybody is that there's a test in the rocket fuel materials where you can define yourself as whether you are more visionary and or integrator, because we find that the co-founders or the CEO of businesses that we work with, it could be either or. It just depends on those defined functions and your own DNA. So typically about 70% of the time, I find that they are the visionary. And sometimes they actually find themselves in the integrator seat because they are more a COO, for want of a title, and they actually start running the team, and that's where they're best suited. So it doesn't mean that you will be a visionary. You'd need to have a look at that test in the Rocket Fuel book or series and define yourself as such that you can either find yourself in that in the visionary seat doing the great stuff like big relationships, R&D, whatever you love working on, and which makes you the best of yourself and puts you in your unique ability.
Perfect. Thanks, Roger. I think it's also important to think, for a lot of you who've got a smaller business to start off with, you might be saying, hey, hold on a second. We've got 5 or 6 seats in this new structure. Who's going to wear what hat? For some, for a small business, you might find yourself wearing multiple hats to start off with. But by identifying what the ideal structure is, it helps you to identify what your next hires are likely to be, what's important for the business moving forward. So, even though you're small, don't think, oh, I shouldn't put together an accountability chart, because this is about building it for the future and for the plan that you want to achieve. And then you might well wear 3 or 4 hats, but it means, what is the next hire that I should be bringing in to make sure I can actually achieve that vision. Yeah.
Spot on.
Cool. I see another Q&A. I'll just have a quick look. Oh, yep, open. Does the system have special adjustments for startups as it relates to any business? Okay. Yeah, so I didn't realize that there was a question there. So thank you, Mark. Thank you for bringing that up. As I said, it actually, the thing I love about EOS, and I genuinely do, is that it actually works across businesses of all sizes. And in fact, Gino has gone on to write the Entrepreneurial Leap, which is all about helping you start a startup business and what you should be looking for when you're starting it. But the actual tools of EOS, they work even for startups and even for smaller businesses. I mean, so as an example, in my business here, there was only Jen and I, but we will actually still have a level 10 meeting and we will still work through that agenda, and it makes such a huge difference. And you can do it with yourself if you can have somebody else to actually hold that you accountable, in terms of it's a really great structured way of getting this stuff out there rather than doing things ad hoc. And all of the tools, if you think about it, you should definitely have data. Whether you're a 1-man band or a 200-man band, you should have data you're looking at, making informed decisions about what's important. When you're looking at people, you might only be 1 or 2 or 3 of you right now. But if you're going to grow and you want to get to a larger size, who are the people that you need? What are the core values you need to actually hold? How do you make sure that you're getting those right people in the right seats? We often end up employing friends and family because it's convenient, and yet that can end in disaster. So by starting with the foundations right at the beginning, you can actually make sure that you're getting the right people right from the word go, and don't have to go through those awkward conversations of firing friends. If you look at the issues part, even in a small business, I've got issues. I've got issues with myself, and I should bring them up, and I should work out what to do with them. But the issues come in, and I jest, but in all seriousness, sometimes it's about using that introverted, the looking internally to go, actually, yeah, what issues do I have? Is a mindset thing holding me back? And if so, what can I do to actually improve that? Am I procrastinating? If so, what can I do to do that? So issues exist no matter whether you're a 1-man band or a large organization. Process, the E-Myth Revisited is one of my favorite books. And in that, Michael Gerber talks about the fact that we have to build a business around, making sure it is scalable. You build it as if it were a franchise, even if you don't want to franchise, because what that does for you is it gives you an opportunity to think about where you're headed to, and it makes sure that the business does not become reliant on you either. So vision, people, data, issues, process, traction, they all apply no matter what size is my overall answer, I suppose, in a long-winded way.
I love the next question. I love the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who'd like to, Vijay, you can talk to that. You've got some experience in that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it deals with business exits, but it increases the value of your business tremendously. And having implemented EOS in my own business, I could see the difference with before we had EOS and after we had EOS, after we started implementing EOS in our business. And it turned the business around just within a few months. And so much so that there's another EOS run company, they looked at our business and said, look, you guys are running a tremendous business. Why don't we just acquire you guys? So yes, look, in that way, it does deal with business exits. It just increases the value of your business. Anyone who wants to invest in your business just comes and has a look, looks at and all the 6 key components working in harmony as a well-oiled machine, and they would love to be part of your business.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can I add one more thing?
Yes, please go.
We also have an amazing person on this call who's one of our guests today, Kerry Bolton.
Yes.
Who's also an exit. She's an author and authority in exit strategies. So if you connect with Kerry through Debra and Vijay, I'm sure she'll be able to guide you on exactly how that works. But I used to sell businesses myself, and I just look at the value of an EOS system being run. I have 3 clients at the moment who are all being lined up to be acquired. So really, really exciting times. Yeah.
We've also got a great white paper that's been written by a VC company about how you can actually increase the value of your business through using EOS. And so that's written by the venture capitalist in terms of, it really does add value and makes you more attractive as an acquisition for venture capitalists or for other businesses. Happy to share that if anybody wants a copy of it. Okay, I'm conscious that we're coming to the end. Look, Vijay and Roger and myself will hang around for a little while after if you've got any other questions. Just got a couple of final thoughts I wanted to leave you with. First of all, choose and use a system. If nothing else, we don't mind if you don't want to work with an implementer, but please, my desperate plea is choose one, use it, put the system in place, get what you want. I shared in the beginning, my passion is helping entrepreneurs get a better life. Life is too short to not be doing what you love with people you love, making a significant difference, being compensated appropriately. We need to get paid for what we do, and time to pursue other passions. I know Roger lives this life. Roger has a thing about golf. He gets to go out there and do his golf thing. The business owners we work with, we want them to get to that point where they're doing that. So get what you want by choosing and using a system. This is just a little testimonial that I actually got from one of my clients down in Christchurch. So Richard Austin is the visionary of Cambridge Wealth Partners. And this was from our quarterly session that we ran the other day. So we're about to hit our 12-month goals in the next month, and we're only 8 months into our year in our EOS journey. EOS traction has been a significant part of that outcome. Significant part of that outcome, and I just lost my slide. And we find our leadership sessions with Debra invaluable. We've just completed our second EOS quarterly session. I can see how we gain more and more value from each session, and we are appreciating in more depth how it works all together. My expectations were wildly exceeded, and I'm bloody excited about where we're going next. Now, I'm really fortunate to receive that. I know that Vijay gets the same kind of feedback. Roger has been doing this for a lot longer, gets that kind of feedback. Like, it really, for us, it's a joy. We get to be involved in these businesses. We see how much they improve. And it's just by implementing a very, very simple system. So that is the end of our formal presentation. We've got contact details up there. If you'd like to get in contact with Roger directly, Vijay or myself, it's all up there. We really are here to help. We're happy to stay behind, answer a few more questions if you'd like to. But other than that, hey, look, thank you for giving us your time. I know that we're busy in today's world, so thank you for giving us that 90 minutes, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Well done, Deb.
Cool.
Some lovely feedback from Sarah just now as she shot off the meeting. Said it was the best 90 minutes of her entire lockdown.
That's awesome. I love it. Thank you. So I'll thank Sarah later on. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Ryan. Richard, awesome. Zoltan, great. Thank you for the time I spent. Okay, yeah, honestly, we are here to help. So anytime, just let us know. We'd be happy that we can share the resources. I think, as Gary said earlier on as well, that EOS Worldwide website is just fantastic. The blog has so much useful content. And I've also got a personal newsletter I send out as well, as I'm sure Vijay does. So, yeah. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your morning. Okay, are there any other questions? I don't think there is. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Maybe. Jen, help me out here. Oh, that's okay. Right. Okay, I'm going to stop the YouTube live.